For remote, shadowy, and robustly unknowable reasons, for open-ended, open-beginninged, and open-middled reasons, reasons which as I speak outmaneuver and outsquirt the bountiful intelligences of every philosopher, mathematician, physicist, biochemical analyst, and carpet salesman living today, October and I have ended up in Villa Minozzo, a snoring cardboard vegetable of a town, if that's not over-romanticizing it, occupying the Apennine hill on which it was built in much the same way the words "This is Villa Minozzo" would if you spray-canned them on the hill's flanks. Something, anything, a thing identifiable as a thing has been so far from taking place here that many hand-washing cowards, unable to cope in the world you and I occupy, consisting of things, events, happenings, and so forth, have emigrated here and enjoyed an existence as close as possible to non-existence as any human spirit can sustain without actually slipping off the rim of creation into waste and void. Though death is resented in Villa Minozzo, as it is in most human societies, it is not for the same reasons that you and I might despise it. That these people, so devoted to uneventfulness, should have something, anything happen to them, even death, which seems to us the biggest imaginable sack of nothing, is such a cruel necessity to them that they argue the cruelty we feel in death is nothing compared to theirs. Whoops. October and I sit outside a supermarket and eat chocolate with apples, which, as is the Apennine custom, are presented to us in a cap. We look at the X on this building, which reminds me of X-Men 2, and, curiously enough, X-Men 1, as well as The Departed, a film in which the letter X appears over all the characters who promptly die. This building, unfortunately, remains standing, like everything in Villa Minozzo, like every car bumper, sign, bin, plural. The infrastructure to prevent things from happening is so profound here that only God or the devil, disguised as a child, could defy it. This politician, like all those who preceded him, has been elected on the promise that he, like all his predecessors, will scrupulously prevent events from taking place in his constituency. We go on a walk past this barn, which looks like a good place for table tennis, and this sign, which due to my level of Italian either asks you to call Bardina if you've lost your glasses, or call Bardina if you found someone else's lost glasses. October stops then to make a sketch of this balcony, so I stop too to film her sketching it. Why does the movement of a hand to make a still picture make such a compelling moving picture, I wonder? You can frame a film to your heart's content, but without a moving hand, what's there? Do you prefer this angle viewer or this angle? I really don't know. I'll put them both in. While October goes on sketching, I film these manky yellow cartons full of cigarette butts and wonder why it is that having a camera in my hand inspires me to follow the progress of trash like a soap opera. People who see my films may be disappointed in real life to find me so disinterested in bins and filth. Though my films present me as a sort of trashophile extraordinaire, in real life I'm a beauty-loving doofus. Perhaps I film bins to overcome my knee-jerk reaction to them of disgusted avoidance, which I sense is probably the wrong way to react to anything which exists. Perhaps I film them to make penance for every time I chose to avoid watching something beautiful, like the light on this hill, in order to film it, like the light on this hill. Should I ever become required to systematically overlook the world around me, my tactic would be to wonder about each site whether or not it would make a good picture, which it is impossible to wonder about trash. Maybe I'd struggle with something absolutely mental, like this. Afraid of what we might become should we demur any longer, we flee to the hillocks, trumpeted away by these insane goose-like animals, which may, on reflection, be geese. The landscape greets us like a watery rag over the heart. Starving, frozen, and sodden with poignancy, we meander in profound, evocative circuits over the unforgiving soil, contemplating unfathomably significant topics such as death and misery, while feasting on the likes of arid muck and worm dung. Human life seems to us a toss-up between the despair that lets you go on living and the despair that does not. O sad earth, grubby, insufficient globe, how confusedly your children range your surface for sustenance and scope. Alack, boo! I attempt to improve the mood by gyrating intently to Bach. This footage, taken by journalists, shows me attending to the E major fugue from Book 1 of the Well-Tempered Clavier, which, though obviously overshadowed by its transcendent and invincible Book 2 counterpart, is still a damn near perfect piece of hoedown boogie music. Show me a man who cannot boogie to the Book 1 E major fugue, and I will show you a failure. A local farmer sees me dancing and, noticing by my bodily movements that it must be to the E major fugue, invites us to her house to listen to her play it on guitar, glockenspiel, and most impressively harmonica. October asks her where she learnt to play, and no doubt based on my severe mistranslation of the question, replies that she is the leading caterer for Antifa Italia. She woke up one morning, she tells us, before this fire, and thought it would be an exercise in sheer self-delusion if she went on pretending it was not her destiny to devote all her talents, all her wit, sweat and soul to anti-fascist catering. It is at times like this that I play down my emotional and financial ties to my friendly capitalist overlords. Destroy what destroys you! I scream, tossing a spear into an image of a dollar sign which appears in the flames. The farmer is so impressed by my behaviour that she allows us to stay. She gives us a room with a beautiful balcony where any man might learn the true meaning of staring at plant pots, and windows giving onto these beautiful views behind two no less beautiful chimneys. Let me show you the views behind their windows, just so you know. Is it just me who finds landscapes more touching behind windows? Perhaps I've spent too long looking at landscapes on rectangular screens like this one, and so mentally place the window there even when it isn't. October spends her days painting and I spend my days filming her painting, wondering what on earth a photographer can offer the world in the way of an actual addition that a painter cannot. Even when she paints from a photograph, October seems to be seeing what I'm merely looking at. I feel like a bat competing with an owl for visual ascendancy. It's only when you film someone drawing you filming them that you realise just how little a filmmaker moves his eyes, how rough and indistinct his gaze is compared to, well, this. What do we learn from taking photographs? We don't learn what the world looks like, we don't learn anything about ourselves, about what we need, what we don't. We don't learn how to see or what seeing is for. We learn only that we are ignorant babies lost on an utterly unknowable planet, unable to make head or tail of what lies in plain sight. We spend about a week with the farmer, sitting on this spot every day to see the sunset. Then move on, past the same geese. After a day's travel, we reach civilization of a sort and develop a long overdue improvement to the Western handshake in anticipation of worldly riches. This woman is so impressed by our technique that she takes us to Florence, a city built at enormous and catastrophic expense by British stage designers for the 1985 film Room with a View, where it filled in for Doncaster, the setting of the original E.M. Forster novel. This fake city proved such a success in the film that the studio left it there and transferred to it all the history and culture previously belonging to Doncaster, most notably the Renaissance, along with the names and reputations of countless illustrious Renaissance Doncastrians, including Dante Alighieri, Leonardo da Vinci and Galileo Galilei. Doncaster's standing has consequently gone downhill a fair bit, and some consider it an inferior city to Florence. We are dropped off in the morning by these ghostly mannequins and given a free breakfast, again based on our handshake, at the Frame Hotel, which is topped off by a marvellous brunch at this church. Deciding on an early lunch, we stop off to meet my old friend Lorenzo in this yellow building, and go with him to visit my old friend Nino in this gold building. We eat highly elaborate crepes and spend the subsequent hour or two strolling around, exercising off lunch, brunch and breakfast and catching up on the state of the continent. Nino and Lorenzo both believe this year will be critical for Europe. A tumult as cataclysmic as the Reformation, as Napoleon or Hitler, is well overdue, Nino says. Lorenzo agrees but argues the coming cataclysm will be blander than those historic precedents. Europe will disintegrate, yes, but uninterestingly, inconspicuously and tastelessly. Lorenzo removes his jumper to reveal those same 3 adverbs printed on his t-shirt. October and I bid them goodbye and have lunch in this cafe. It's very good. A local mystic asks us whether we'd be willing to have a glass of wine with him in his mystic shack. We say yes, and end up blathering to him on mystical subjects till the next morning, when we wake up on these mattresses. His mystic shack, we agree, looks less glamorous in the daylight, much like mysticism itself. We spend the morning reading from his store of literature and decorating his coffee table with the sign of Aries. The mystic is so impressed with our work that he upgrades us to the mystic bridal suite, overlooking the terracotta roof tiles of the mystic shack and Chianti beyond. We spend a great part of the day taking photos on and of the balcony and sending them to old friends. October's friend Wilhelm claims he was born on a similar balcony and dedicated a vast portion of his astounding faculties to guaranteeing his ability of dying on one too, symmetry being of the utmost importance to him as a young man, before he realised just how brief life was. We spend the rest of the day sitting in a stationary jeep before ambling on an evening stroll with a stray wolf. The building with the umbrella on the left of your screen viewer happens to be the former residence of Giuseppe Mardini, a 19th century astronomer who predicted to the actual day the date on which humankind would first step on the moon. He was famed in his own time for discovering multiple asteroids and having what seemed like a bottomless memory, which he put to the task of distinguishing bodies in the bottomlessness of space. As he was dying, the doctors reported his insistent but peaceful repetition of the word there, there. There. We decide, in brawny spirits, to flee the mystic's town and hike back to Florence over gorgeous ancient billows of Tuscan country lusciousness. What lucky, lucky folks these Etruscans were, I think to myself, munching on a wad of fertile soil. What lucky, lucky Bronze Ages staked their homes in this vale of fecundity, while their brothers and sisters wandered freezing over the Bering Strait or boiling in the Sahara. Happy Etruscans, your language needed no word for paradise. On the soil of Chianti, tarmac grows into a tar tree, a plastic bag into a plastic tree, a grape left overnight into a vineyard. We walk past this graveyard and these cypresses, radiantly inky in the twilight, and look, there, faintly over the closest streetlight, that's Venus. As we go deeper into the wilderness, the planet gets clearer, while everything else gets murkier. I tell October this bit looks a lot like Van Gogh's Starry Night. She says she doesn't remember it. We arrive at Florence in the wee small hours and go to this very blue bar, where we meet a party of friends who take us back to this apartment and drive us, that afternoon, to a lake. We spend exactly 4 hours playing a game where one guy throws a stone and the other people try to hit the stone in mid-air before it touches the water. October, disinterested in the physics of the game, stands on the opposite lakeside and stares with the utmost attention at the reflection of the adjacent promontory in the water, which seems stranger and less natural the longer she looks at it. Then she starts staring at this bird box and waiting for birds to fly in. On the way back to Florence, we agree there should be a word for this vague mood. Late at night, in a car, electric lights of other cars and towns whizzing by, paired with a feeling of warmth, comfort, and safety. We settle on the name Dawley.